Well, just over 1 month ago, Blizzard started formal legal proceedings against a number of WoW private servers. Many of them were at a stage where they were asked to stop their actions via cease and desist letters, but for one of them in particular, Turtle WoW, they were properly sued by Blizzard. And with the legal battle ongoing, just recently Turtle WoW have dropped an open letter to Blizzard, aiming to set the record straight and to create a framework that would allow player-made content to exist under the World of Warcraft IP, instead of them having to operate in the shadows. So first of all, I want to just say this video isn't going to be in favor of playing private servers. If you want to play WoW the official way, it's going to be through Blizzard, and it doesn't really matter how you feel about them as a company, because going elsewhere will always present risks. I expect videos on this topic to be a bit of a one-off kind of thing for this channel as well. In this case, I'm making an exception due to the nature of what's already going on between Turtle WoW and Blizzard, and what's just recently happened. The reason I want to talk about this is because, similar to what I was saying on my last video about this topic, is we're seeing history repeat itself once again. So you've probably heard of Nestarius. They were a huge WoW private server that closed before Classic WoW released, and they had their own open letter to Blizzard as well, which was in the form of a petition which asked Blizzard to commit to creating legacy servers for Classic WoW. This petition ended up being a big catalyst that eventually caused Classic WoW to be released in 2019, and now I think very deliberately Turtle WoW have also named their communication as an open letter as well, looking to follow suit from Nestarius, albeit in a very different way. Let's go over the main points of the letter quickly. They say, unfortunately, unlike other studios, Blizzard does not yet have a framework that allows projects like ours to operate without risking legal conflict. With that in mind, we respectfully ask that Blizzard consider establishing a formal ecosystem for licensing fan-run community servers. On behalf of our community, we can say that all players would be deeply grateful if you would consider working with fan communities like ours to create a clear, lawful pathway for building upon the legacy of the World of Warcraft universe, with your blessing. By fostering an ecosystem for modders to run their own community servers, Blizzard can continue to oversee and control its progress while encouraging fan-driven innovation. This approach would not only enhance the gameplay experience, but also strengthen the bonds between developers and players, ensuring that World of Warcraft remains a true home for everyone who loves it. A license framework for fan-run servers would extend World of Warcraft's active audience by bringing back players who have drifted away from the official game in search of niche experiences that mainstream releases can't accommodate. Community-crafted mods fill those gaps, offering gameplay that appeals to smaller, passionate audiences. This not only keeps the overall player base larger and more diverse, but also gives Blizzard a source of successful concepts that can be identified and integrated into future official content. We are open to any licensing structure that fits Blizzard's risk management and financial guidelines, and should Blizzard wish to move forwards, we stand ready to adapt and meet whatever technical, security, and data privacy standard you require. And that was something which I really didn't expect to come out of this whole scenario. So let's talk about the good things which could potentially arise from this first, and the positives of this situation. So direct community input within games is a good thing overall. They do give some examples in their posts of large collaborations between communities and developers, such as with Rockstar Games and GTA, Epic Games and Fortnite, Bethesda, and so on. Genuinely empowering your players as developers is one of the most powerful tools you have. Even in World of Warcraft, add-ons have allowed for years of player-made features and additions to the game. Not all of them have been positive, sure, but it's not really like Blizzard took much of an interest overall up until the release of Midnight. And with Midnight, we're just gonna have to hope they do a better job than what modders have been able to achieve over years and years. What about some other examples here? Do you think hardcore WoW would have happened were it not for a community of players developing their own add-on and hyping it up organically? No, it would never have existed on the scale which it did within the game. This happened because of player innovation. What about old school RuneScape? Let's look at that too. Most people play it through a client that wasn't even made by Jagex, called RuneLite. Did you know at one point Jagex were going to try and shut down RuneLite, arguing that it infringed on their copyright and made botting easier, until they found a basis for RuneLite and Jagex to work together instead of just closing it down. And now RuneLite is the way to play old school RuneScape, as it basically allows players to install add-ons really easily. It's a community-made gameplay client with community-made add-ons, and it's a massive reason for old school RuneScape's success. Seriously, your average player will be gone within within 2 weeks if they didn't have a blue arrow telling them where to go for quest helper. In fact, in 2024, Jagex even proposed something called Project Zenaris. They say this community server system was described as a way for players to rent separate servers from Jagex. These servers could then be customized by players to create a brand new gameplay experience. This is pretty much what Turtle WoW was saying they want to happen as well. It would have been the developer giving the players the tools and saying, okay, go and have fun, see what you can make. Albeit with Project Zenaris, it's now on pause, with Jagex essentially saying that other things need more priority at the moment. This is a bit ambitious, we might come back to it later. Either way, it was a crazy idea to pitch. Here's another good example. You may have heard of a community mod made to Warcraft 3 called Defense of the Ancients, which pitted players versus one another as champions in a game with lanes, objectives, and a base on either end. Off of this, Valve made Dota 2, and some years later, Riot Games appeared and made League of Legends. Do you think League of Legends Worlds will be being broadcasted right now were it not for community-generated content? Maybe it still would have. Maybe not. The point is, there have been so many examples over the years of players or games communities adding to them in a way which often shapes the entire fate of the game. And whilst the developer can provide the framework for the game, the hosting, the story or so on, if you have hundreds or thousands or even millions of people playing the game over a period of time, some of those people are just going to have ideas or work on things which the developer would have never had the time to do, or even sometimes the innovation. With add-ons, players solve their own problems. With mods, they make their own fun, and this empowerment is something that is driving gaming across so many genres. It will provide legitimacy and allow all the work to be kept that's been done so far as well, and there's a clear demand for this type of content at the moment, and a lot of people waiting for Classic Plus who would never try private servers due to a lack of trust and not being willing to invest time into something which is unofficial. Blizzard, in theory, could reach a legal agreement, license these types of servers, and then just collect the money. If you ever thought Blizzard wouldn't pass up easy money, this sounds like easy money to me. It's their IP at the end of the day. If they want to do that, I would assume that they can. A few more benefits would be Blizzard hosting, the modern client, localization, and so on. Those are the main positives, but there are, one or two problems here as well, aren't there? So the whole talk on players making their own content and being empowered to create within the gaming space is great. But you have to think that Turtle WoW have just gone way overboard here with how far they've taken things, and this kind of feels like a bit of a reflection of the WoW private server scene at large. Is there a game out there that has a larger and more long-standing private server scene than WoW? Usually private server stuff for games are, look at me, I'm gonna log in and give myself 1,000,000 gold and all the items and one-shot stuff. It's superficial stuff and people get bored within a week. With World of Warcraft, it's people straight up making what they want the game to be, but in a serious manner. And the big problem here for a lot of these private servers is, not only are they using Blizzard's IP, they're monetizing it as a direct competitor to Blizzard. You know, companies might turn a blind eye if you're just doing something for fun or it's small, but making money off of somebody else's intellectual property, now that is a problem just about anywhere. Turtle WoW are also releasing this letter, amid being literally sued as well. Not only are they being sued, but Blizzard are pressing charges under the RICO Act as well, which deals with organized crime. So to go from, we consider you to be a criminal organization, to, oh yeah, actually we'll agree a licensing deal, that would be a crazy change of opinion. And I don't know if they even could, to be honest. Once RICO's kicked off, as far as I'm aware, it either needs to be acquitted due to lack of evidence, or a settlement made in accordance with the damages asked for. Again, let's draw some parallels with the Nestarius situation. They closed due to a cease and desist letter before being sued, and then they made the petition after they were officially closed, which was eventually successful. Also, as far as I'm aware, they weren't monetizing. But for Turtle WoW, it took for them to be sued before they've made any statement of wanting to go official, which honestly is not a good look, either for the prospect of any collaboration being made a reality, or indeed the actual future of the server. If this letter happened prior to any of this happening, it may have been more favorably received, but at the end of the day, Turtle WoW was still monetizing and infringing on Blizzard's copyright in a massive way, and they've released the letter and they're still doing this. I think overall community or user-generated content has proven time and again to be one of the most powerful and driving forces in gaming across so many live service games. Allowing your players to have the tools to create and improve within your game is something that a ton of games have massively benefited from over the years. It's taken games such as GTA, Minecraft, RuneScape and more to new heights that they simply would never have reached were it not for their incredibly dedicated player base and the developers' willingness to collaborate and communicate with them. The evidence for the positives in user-generated content in gaming is pretty overwhelming. However, the current legal situation with WoW and Blizzard probably makes this, at the moment, a very difficult bridge to cross. I mean, what would it mean for other private servers? Would this end up splitting the player base if there were too many options? What about the RICO charges, settlement, and so on? There is potential here as shown through so many other games and genres, but I would have to say that I'm doubtful that WoW's letter will have the same success that Nestarius's one did. Whatever happens, I think the key takeaway is that some degree of community involvement in Classic Plus would be beneficial long term for the project. If not, we just have another scenario of developers making content and hoping that they've read the room right when it comes to what should and what should not be in the game. People will always say there's never a consensus of exactly what should be in Classic Plus, but that's why things such as polling exists and why it's worked so well for old school RuneScape. And even then there are considerations to be made from the developer of what should and what should not be polled too. On top of that, sometimes polling slows down the release of content because things fail to pass and it can make development work more complicated. But at the end of the day, it's a back and forth between players and the developer with a common aim of deciding what should exist within the game. And it is probably the simplest way to ask the most players for their thoughts. And it's not like the devs on old school RuneScape don't just introduce content anyway or make changes to the game saying that it's an integrity update. Again, we'll see what happens in this space in the future. It could very well be nothing, or it could shape the entire future of Classic WoW. What do you reckon though? Should the community actively have a say in the development of Classic Plus in a format such as polling? Do you think anything of substance will arise from this? And hypothetically, would you want a world where you could pay Blizzard a subscription to play fan-run projects? I'll be following this along though, and we'll see what happens next. So with all that said, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all in the next one very soon.